The trail was open. She was right about that. It was, in fact, the only thing she was right about that whole terrible week, and it is the thing that killed her. Because she heard the word open and she decided it meant safe. And out here, those two words have almost nothing to do with each other. She had a permit. She had experience, real experience, on real trails in real places. And she had a sentence, one she said to me, and to a hiker coming out, and to anyone who tried to slow her down, and the sentence was, "The trail is open," as if that settled it. As if the park leaving a trail legally open in 112-degree August was the same as the park promising her she would walk off it alive. She hiked into Big Bend on a morning that was already deadly, and she made it through the whole first day, and by the time she made camp she felt like she had proven every one of us wrong. She died on the second day. Because the desert does not kill you on the first one. This is one of those stories. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite. The woman is invented, built from the same profile of experienced, determined, capable people I warn every summer, most of whom listen. No real person is named. I'm going to call myself Wyatt and the woman Marla. This is a dramatization. The park is real, the heat is real, and the specific way this enormous remote place kills people who confuse being allowed with being safe is very real. I have been a ranger at Big Bend for a long time, and I want to start by telling you what this park actually is, because most people who come here have no idea, and the not knowing is where it starts. Big Bend is one of the largest and most remote national parks in the country. It sits in the far corner of West Texas, hours from anything you would call a town, and inside it you can drive for a very long time and see no one. There are mountains in the middle of it, the Chisos, that are high enough to be cool and green and forgiving. And wrapped all around them is the Chihuahuan Desert, and in August, that desert is one of the most dangerous pieces of ground in North America. And almost nobody believes that, because it does not look like Death Valley. It looks like scrubby, rolling, ordinary desert. It looks survivable. That is the lie of it. Marla came here to do a specific thing. She wanted a backcountry loop, a real one, out in the low desert, a strenuous, exposed route with a night out in the middle of it, the kind of trip that is genuinely wonderful in the cool months and is, in August, something closer to a dare. She was in her 50s and she was fit, and she had done big trails, and she had the gear and the maps and the confidence of a person who had walked hard country before and come home fine every time. She was not a fool. I need you to hear that, because the easy version of this makes her one, and she was not. She was accomplished. That was the trouble. Everything I could learn about her later fit the same shape. She was the kind of person who did not leave things half done. She had a wall of finisher medals probably, or the life equivalent of one, a track record of hard things attempted and completed, of doubters proven wrong, of trips that other people called too much and she called Tuesday. That record was real, and it was earned, and it was, without her ever knowing it, the most dangerous thing she carried into this park, heavier than any pack, because it had taught her over decades that the warning is usually wrong and the finish is always worth it. She was not being reckless out there. She was being exactly who she had always been, the person who does not quit. And it had never once cost her anything. So she had no reason to believe that this time the bill would be different, and this time the bill was everything. She came to my desk to pick up her backcountry permit, and that is rung 1, and it was the longest conversation I have ever had with a person I could not save. I told her the truth plainly. I told her it was going to be 112 degrees down where she was going, that the desert floor and the exposed rock would be far hotter, that this loop in this heat was the single most dangerous thing a person could choose to do in this park, and that I was asking her, personally, not to. I told her the mountains were cool and beautiful and right there, and that she could have a spectacular trip up high and never touch the killing heat at all. And she said the trail was open. She said it kindly, mostly. She was not screaming at me, but she said it the way a person says a thing that ends a discussion. And underneath it was the whole belief that ran her, which was that if the park had not physically closed the trail, then the park had no business telling her not to walk it, and any warning past that point was overreach, was gatekeeping, was a ranger deciding he knew what she could handle better than she did. And I understood the feeling, because it is a decent feeling in most of life. Nobody likes being managed. But she had aimed a good instinct at the one place it gets people killed. So I told her the thing I most need you to hear, the thing this whole story turns on. I told her that open does not mean safe, that the two are not the same and were never the same. The park keeps that trail open because we do not close the whole desert every summer, because we cannot and should not decide for every adult which risks they are allowed to take, because open is a legal status and not a safety rating. Open means you are allowed to make this decision. It has never once meant that the decision is a good one. The trail being open is not the park telling you that you will be fine. It is the park telling you that whether you are fine is now entirely up to you, and out here, at 112 degrees, that is a far more frightening sentence than any closure. People want the world to sort their risks for them. They want a closed sign to mean stop, and an open sign to mean go, a clean line drawn by someone official, so they never have to make the hard call themselves. But a wild place cannot draw that line for you, and it should not, because the line is not the same for every person or every day or every hour. And the only honest thing a park can do is keep the information out where you can see it and then let you choose. Open is not a verdict. Open is a question. And the question is, do you actually understand what you are about to do? And she did not, and the open trail could not tell her, because a trail cannot know anything. Only a person can, and she had decided before she ever reached my desk that she already did. She heard it as more gatekeeping. I watched it land as one more person underestimating her, and there is no arguing a person out of that, because the more you insist, the more it confirms the thing they already believe about you. Rung 2 was the water, and this is the one that should have been undeniable, because it is just arithmetic. I told her there is no water on that loop. None. She would have to carry every drop for 2 days, and in that heat, doing that much work, a person needs more water than they can realistically carry. I have watched strong people try to carry enough and fail, not because they were weak, but because enough is heavier than a human being can move across that terrain. The math does not close. She told me she had done desert trips before, that she knew how to ration, that she would be careful. And she did know how to ration in the deserts she had done before, which were not this one, in a month that was not August. There was one more warning she got that did not come from a ranger, and those are the ones that sometimes land when ours do not, and it did not land either. As she was starting down, a hiker was coming up and out, a man who had been down in that desert and turned himself around, and he stopped her and told her the truth from the inside, that it was worse down there than any number on a sign could tell her, that he was strong and he had quit, that she should quit too. And she thanked him. And she heard what people in her frame of mind always hear, which is that he was a man who could not handle it, and that his turning back said something about him and nothing about her. Every person who came out beaten made her more certain, not less, because in her mind, they were the proof that this was hard, and she was the kind of person hard things were made for. There was a couple at my desk right after her, backcountry hopefuls too, and I gave them the same talk, and they looked at the number and they moved their whole trip up into the Chisos and did the high country instead. And they had a beautiful 3 days and drove home, and they are alive. I tell you about the ones who listened every time because the warning was free and clear and identical for everyone. One party heard 112 degrees and changed the plan. The other party heard it and changed nothing, because the plan was the point, and the loop was the trophy, and the trail was open. She started down into the desert early on the first morning, and here is where I have to teach you the thing that makes day 2 a killer, because it is the whole mechanism of this, and almost nobody understands it. The desert does not take you all at once on the first day. It takes a down payment. All through that first day, in that heat, doing that work, a person loses water and salt faster than they can replace it, and they build up a deficit, a hole, and the cruel part is that the hole does not announce itself. You can be hours into a serious dehydration deficit and still feel like you are basically handling it, especially if you are experienced, because experience teaches you to push through discomfort, and pushing through discomfort is exactly the wrong skill here. So she walked all day, and she got tired the way you expect to get tired on a hard hike, and she made her camp that evening genuinely believing she had done it, that the rangers had been dramatic, that she had met the famous Big Bend heat and beaten it. And her experience, the thing she trusted most, worked against her at every step, because experience in the desert and experience with heat are two different things, and she had the wrong one. All her years of hard trails had trained her to push through discomfort, to keep going when her body complained, to treat the voice that says, "Stop," as weakness to be overcome. On a cool mountain, that instinct is a strength, and it is most of what makes a great hiker. In this heat, it is a loaded gun, because the discomfort is not weakness talking. It is your body giving you the only warning it has, and a lifetime of overriding that warning had built in her a reflex that was, out here, exactly backward. She was very good at ignoring the one thing she most needed to hear. She had not beaten it. She had gone into debt to it, quietly, all day, and now she was going to try to sleep it off. And here is the thing about a desert night in August. It does not give you enough back. The temperature drops, but not far enough, not long enough, and a body that is already deep in a water and salt deficit cannot repair that overnight without a great deal of water it does not have, and rest it cannot really get lying on hot ground. So she woke up on the morning of day 2, not at 0, not reset, but already behind, already in the hole she had dug the day before, with the second day's heat still entirely ahead of her. That is why she died on day 2 and not day 1. Day 1 was the trap, day 2 was the spring closing. She started the second morning already spent, already dehydrated, already past the point a good night's rest could have fixed even if she had gotten one, and then she asked that depleted body to do a second full day of desert work in 112 degrees. There was never enough left. The outcome of day 2 was mostly decided by the end of day 1, by a woman who felt, at that first camp, like she was winning. And here is the decision at the center of it, the hinge, and it is the one I think about. On the morning of day 2, she had a choice, and it was a real one. Behind her was the way she had come, a known route back to the trailhead, shorter now than the loop ahead. In front of her was the rest of the loop, deeper into the remote desert, farther from any help, committing her to the full second day. Turning back would have meant not finishing the loop she had come all this way for. It would have meant the rangers were right. And she went forward, into the loop, because she was the kind of person who finishes the thing. And finishing the thing had served her well her entire life, right up until it walked her deeper into a desert she was already losing to. I want you to see how reasonable that choice felt from the inside, because that is the horror of it. She was not being brave or stubborn in a way she would have recognized. She was tired and a little off, though she would not have called it that, and in front of her was the trail she had planned and paid for and told people about, and behind her was retreat. And retreat meant walking back into my office and saying I could not do it, and she had never in her life walked back into anyone's office and said that. Going forward did not feel like a gamble. It felt like continuing. It felt like the same forward motion that had carried her through every hard thing she had ever finished. And the desert let it feel exactly that way, because the desert does not send up a flare. At the moment, a decision turns fatal. It lets the fatal decision feel just like all the good ones did. And that is the cruelest thing about it, that the worst choice of her life was made to feel like simply carrying on. Let me ask you something, because this one is not really about a trail. When was the last time you treated allowed as the same thing as safe? When the fact that no one had stopped you, that the door was open, that it was technically permitted, felt like proof that it was fine? Tell me below, because that is the whole engine of this. She did not ignore a closed gate. There was no closed gate. She walked through an open one and mistook the openness for a blessing, when all it ever was the absence of a barrier. And the absence of a barrier is not the presence of safety. It is just the park trusting you to know the difference. She did not know the difference, and almost nobody does until the desert teaches it to them on the second day. Out on the loop, deep in it now, the second day did what the second day does. Her water, rationed as carefully as she knew how, ran down toward nothing. Because there was never enough to begin with, because enough could not be carried. And in that dry heat, her body kept spending water it did not have, and the deficit from day 1 compounded with the losses of day 2, and somewhere out there, the arithmetic simply came due. Heat does one thing that nobody plans for, which is that it takes your judgment before it takes your legs. So the version of Marla who might have made a smart emergency call, who might have found shade and stopped and waited for the cool of night, was already gone before her body was, replaced by a version whose thinking was running hot and slow, and who kept making the confident, wrong, forward decisions of a person who no longer knew how much trouble she was in. And she was so far from help. That is the part of Big Bend that finishes these stories. This is not a park with a road around every corner. She was deep in a backcountry loop, hours and hours from the trailhead, in a place with no signal, in a park so vast that even when we know something is wrong, reaching the wrong thing takes time we often do not have. People do not understand the scale of it until they are standing in the middle of it. You can look in every direction and see not one sign of another human being, not a road, not a light, nothing but desert running out to mountains that are a day away. It is one of the most beautiful solitudes left in this country, and it is beautiful for exactly the reason it is deadly, which is that there is no one out there. The emptiness she had come to find was the same emptiness that meant no one would find her, and those were never two different things. They were one thing, wearing a friendly face on the way in. Her car sat at the trailhead. A car at a trailhead means nothing for a day because it belongs to someone on an overnight, someone who is supposed to still be out there. There was no moment where anyone could have known in time that a strong, experienced woman was in her final hours on an open trail, because everything about the trip she had chosen, the remoteness, the solitude, the multi-day permit that told us she would be out there exactly this long, meant that nobody would come looking until she was already overdue. And overdue out there in that heat is a word that arrives far too late to matter. I'm not going to walk you through her last hours, and I am not going to put you out there on that loop with her, because she was a real person and not a spectacle, and this channel has a line I will not cross. She was found on the second day, out on the loop, and the ruling was heat-related, and there was no crime and no accident and no bad luck, only a trail that was open, and a woman who thought that word meant something it has never meant. If any of this reached you, do the small thing that carries it to the next person about to read an open trail as a safe one. Like this video so it finds someone at a permit desk instead of a comment section, and subscribe so you are here for the next one. Not for me and not for a number on a screen. Do it so that one more experienced, capable, determined person somewhere hears a ranger say, "Open is not the same as safe," and believes it, and moves their trip to the cool of the mountains or the cool of the year, and comes home to be annoyed for decades about how overblown the warnings were. I have turned this one over more than most, and here is where it leaves me. There is a kind of person, and they are often the best kind, the capable kind, the kind who does hard things and finishes what they start, who has learned across a whole life that most limits are other people's small ideas of them, and that pushing past the warning is usually where the good stuff is. And they are usually right. That is what makes it so hard to protect them, because the instinct that gets them killed out here is the same instinct that built everything good in their lives. But the desert is the exception that instinct never learned, and it does not sort people by how accomplished they are, and it does not care that you have finished every hard thing you ever started. It offers everyone the identical terms, water and shade and time, and an open trail is not a fourth thing it offers you. An open trail is just the desert declining to argue. The trail is open the way a cliff edge is open. Nobody built a fence, and the lack of a fence is not permission, and it is not safety. It is just the country trusting you to see the drop for yourself. She saw an open trail and read it as a green light, as the park's blessing, as proof that a reasonable person could do this, when all it ever was the park stepping back and letting an adult decide, and betting, the way we always have to bet, that she would decide well. That is the quiet weight the word open carries, and almost no one feels it. When a place stays open to you, it is not promising you anything. It is handing you the whole responsibility and trusting you to carry it. The freedom to walk that trail and the danger of walking that trail are the same freedom. You cannot have one without the other. But the price of that freedom is that open has to be allowed to mean deadly too, on the same trail, on the same day, and the only thing standing between those two meanings is your own honest judgment about yourself, which is the one instrument the heat takes first. She decided that open meant safe. It was the one thing she got wrong, and it was the only thing that mattered. The trail is still open today. The sign at the trailhead still says the same thing it said to her, that it is 112 degrees down there in the summer, that there is no water, that this is the most dangerous choice in the park. Open and deadly at the same time on the same sign, which is the truth about that trail and always was. The sign was never talking about somebody else. Next time we leave the dry heat behind for cold water, where there is no permit and no closure and no open sign to hide behind, and the water takes the strongest, most experienced person on the trip anyway, on the first day, for no reason at all but the water being water. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.